Otherkin, gender fluid, trans species, transgender, trans fill in the blank. A question that some people have asked me about this is, so what? Who is this hurting? People are just living their lives, Melissa. They're just doing what makes them happy. Why do you care to speak out against something like this when people are just living their truth? And I have to say that this is a fair question. So, we're going there today, folks. I can say that I love these people and that I genuinely care about them, but for many, this is not enough. I must affirm, or else I am hateful. I'm the one doing the hurtful thing. The idea is that I'm doing harm unless I affirm their truth. I'm judgmental, intolerant, shaming, and have hatred of anyone who is different from me. Because I don't approve of their version of what's real, then I'm the abnormal one. This can be a foundational force in why so many people do not deny people's truth. Nobody wants to be depicted as a bully, right? They want to be inclusive and seen as an advocate for those who seem to be oppressed. And on the surface, that sounds great, guys. Now, there's lots I could say just about that alone, but number one, biology is not bigotry. And number two, any philosopher worth their fancy quill pen or logical person will say 1,000 times over that what's true and real is what corresponds to reality. You don't invent truth, you discover it. So to the point, who is it hurting? Let's start with some literature. Let's say, for instance, someone was reading the highly recommended book, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Huxley has a writing style that's a bit foreign to modern readers, but trust me, if my brain can brain it, your brain can brain it too. The book is set in a utopian society, which dystopian, utopian is my favorite genre ever. There is world peace, and everyone is living a pretty comfy life at the expense of true virtues. They realize that this is the perfect society. Nobody hurts, everyone does what feels good, and there's order in the way of life. Sure, they have to suspend truth and morality to do it, but who cares? People are genetically engineered to like their status, families are dissolved, and people live in pleasure. Vices aren't crimes after all. We're all good. This isn't hurting anyone at all. Now, what's wrong with that logic? Also, who decides who's hurting who? Who says that enabling someone isn't hurting them? Many people can attest that enabling behavior that isn't good for someone always ends up being the wrong thing. Not only that, if truth is subjective, which is becoming more and more acceptable in our postmodern society, and we're playing semantic word games, what counts as hurt? If they're just living their truth and we're forced to conform to this, or else we're intolerant, closed-minded, and bigoted, then the only acceptable outcome is we are forced to conform to a lie. Doesn't this hurt those who have to go truthfully bankrupt to conform? Their conscience doesn't allow for them to hold to something that's blatantly untrue. So let's follow that logic out to its logical conclusion. If we're to redefine what a human, woman, child, or man is based on mere feelings, this leaves one more question to be answered. Who decides what's true then? Time and time again, when truth is relative to some degree, right? With a floating, changeable morality, then the ones who get to decide what's true are those who have the power. They don't convince you by force, but by re-education. They redefine things and are able to sell it under the guise of tolerance and acceptance. And people buy it because, well, you're intolerant and hurting others if you don't. Honestly, I hate using this word for this, but this is brilliant propaganda. Think about it. Love is love. Black Lives Matter. Tolerance. Coexist. Think of all these slogans and what they imply if you disagree with them. This is so much more gray than a frontal assault that people can see and parse out. This lurks in the dark corners of people's emotional heartstrings. So they must re-educate people about what a woman, person, or human is. Let me try to put this another way. Do you remember that 90s movie Hook? I actually loved that movie. Brilliant acting. We're so used to hearing how falsehood is forced. But what if we're seduced and convinced by it? Think about it. In this movie, Hook, the bad guy, who wants to hurt Peter Pan by making Peter's kids, Jack and Maggie, love him. The little girl Maggie ain't having it.
That's not true, Jack. You're a liar!
And tries to warn her brother, who is more susceptible to Hook. I mean, she's immediately canceled. I mean, they just get her out of there. She's intolerant and closed-minded, and who needs her? And Hook, who's brilliantly played by Dustin Hoffman, continues to convince, to re-educate Jack to love him, and succeeds. This was not done by force, but by persuasion with what seems to be loving. He was convinced by manipulation. He was convinced of the lie in his heart, instead of just a blind obedience. This has happened on a cultural scale, but people think it's good. There is no dialogue about this for people who have the power right now. To them, dialogue is when you submit to their social justice creed in fear and trembling. You are not tolerated. You are conquered. This is the core of this, in my opinion. This is what happens when God is demoted and man is elevated. Faith in God, the unchanging standard of goodness and truth, is replaced with faith in mankind. A fickle and disastrous standard where truth and goodness is based on who has the most power. Who wants to suffer for what's true when they can conform so easily to something that seems harmless? For many, the idea of bearing pain for the sake of truth seems absolutely ridiculous. You just gotta believe what they're saying and conform to a lie. No big deal. So if right now in our culture we are forced to redefine truth by this social force, or else commit social suicide, or be theoretically crucified by the culture for not saying a man can be a woman, or a woman can be a man, or a man can be a 6-year-old, or a gender fluid person can be a mermaid, then this creates a society that decides what's true, not based on reality, but based on who can force you to believe it. I don't think people want to give up their minds to conform to someone else's false reality, something that our culture is glad to embrace. And guys, the irony absolutely kills me because everyone wants to think freely, but they're just so eager to give up their mind and give up truth and logic in the name of tolerance that I don't think they see the deception or the irony. You know what? Mankind does away with God and wants their utopia, but this is the path to the gulags. I refuse to affirm falsehoods and propaganda. I will not be bullied to sacrifice truth on the altar of a false peace. Okay, but I digress. Back to how this hurts people. Okay, say you and I, you dozens of viewers out there, hi. Say we were buds and we were hanging out one day. Let's just say that we are conformed to this ideology, and I look at you and absolutely serious, I tell you that I completely believe that I feel that my truth is that I am a 6-foot tall man. I have struggled with this all my life, and I have finally come to believe that this is who I truly am, and I would appreciate your love and support. I also say that the food we're about to eat, I must eat off the floor, because I'm wanting to get in touch with my animalistic side, because I'm also part German Shepherd. Not only that, but I believe that squares are now circles, and because I'm 1/3 Hobbit, I'd appreciate it if you spoke Elvish to me whenever possible. Literally none of that would hurt anyone at all. As my friend, you would probably affirm and have to agree with me since this is my truth. This brings me happiness and fulfillment. I'm finally free to be myself. What's wrong with that? You're told to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It's their final, most essential command. That's Orwell, just FYI. Speaking of Orwell, he uses a word in his book called doublethink. This is holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind at the same time and accepting both of them. This is how people learn to submit their minds in the book to the party's ideology. If the party says 2 + 2 = 5, men are women, humans can be cats, and a square is actually a circle, then you must believe it. Here's the thing though, the goal is to convince the person that all truth exists within the mind. And the rightly ordered mind believes whatever the party says is true, not what's actually true. Here's the thing, guys, you can choose what you believe, but you can't change what's true. It is not brave or revolutionary to deny the truth in order to speak your truth. This is not the way to find peace. This will leave you feeling empty and exhausted. It might make you feel good for just a little while, kind of like how junk food makes you feel a little good for a while, but it will just inevitably bring anxiety, pain, depression, and emptiness. There's a reason why Jesus says that he's the truth, because to follow him means to follow what's true and based in reality. Some hard truth here. Many people who are in the trans community are depressed and suicidal. That is true. That is a fact. Even when the majority of the culture and society is supportive of them. They're not this way because society and people are bending over backwards to accept them. I say it's probably because they're denying the most foundational truths about reality. And the culture is propping this up like it's normal instead of taking care of the main issue. It's not loving to affirm an illusion. So who does it hurt? More like, what does it hurt? Truth. And I submit that believing in lies hurts those who believe in them. I'd rather be divided by truth than united in error any day. So I know that was a lot, but let me know your thoughts on this. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I missed something? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, make sure to check out the description for more resources that will hopefully make your brain hurt even more.